everyone for your overwhelming support for the first two episodes of Fireside Chats. This time we bring to you Dr. Abhijit Nadkarni. Dr. Abhijit Nadkarni grew up in Margaon attending St. Anne's Primary School, then Bhatekar Model High School, and later Chowgule's Higher Secondary School. Like many students, he pursued his MBBS at Goa Medical College. During this time, he developed a growing interest in psychiatry, which led him to pursue a DPM in psychiatry at Institute of Psychiatry and Human Behavior, IPHB, Goa. After moving to London for his specialist training at the South London and Maudsley NHS Foundation Trust, his direction took shape. He became a member of the Royal College of Psychiatrists and pursued an MSc in Mental Health Services Research from King's College, London. His focus gradually shifted from practice to research, leading him to complete a PhD in epidemiology. His shift was driven by his desire to understand and address the broader challenges, especially alcohol addiction among the Goan population. Today, as the NIHR Professor of Global Research and Co-Director of the Centre for Global Mental Health at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, Dr. Nadkarni is at the forefront of global mental health research. His work with Sangat focuses on researching effectiveness of peer support systems for teenagers, increasing access to undeserved communities. In this conversation, we'll explore Dr. Nadkarni's journey from a medical student to a global leader in mental health. We will discuss the lessons he learned along the way, the choices that shaped his career, and his thoughts on education, career transitions, and the current challenges facing students and parents in Goa and all over the world. At the outset, I would just like you to talk about your journey till here. You did medical just as any kid would aspire to become a doctor, but then slowly shaped your career, went from a psychiatry practitioner to today you are a researcher. So how did that transition happen?
Sure. I guess our young friend there did a nice job of giving a snapshot of my educational journey. And then what I'm probably going to speak about is a part of it, right? Because the journey never ends. A slight correction to what you said. I mean, it sounded as if I didn't know what I was doing, which is partly true. I mean, I think it's always good to kind of be in a space where you have a little bit of uncertainty about what you do, because that helps you to explore other avenues. Compared to being kind of very stuck on this is what I'm going to do, I have got my next 50 years planned out. I think that's, in my opinion, not a great place to be. But yeah, I mean, as you said, that there's no exciting story or backstory on why I wanted to become a doctor. Unfortunately, there's no exciting story I can tell. It was just something that I wanted to become. I have no clue why. Beyond the fact that there were few members of the slightly distant family who were doctors, but I think that's not really unusual in a place like India. I mean, everyone probably has at least one doctor in the family. So yeah, I always, sounds very cheesy, but I always wanted to be a doctor, even from the time that I was in secondary school. I think the real shaping of the journey happened after you kind of get into the medical training, and that's where the real shaping of where one wants to be generally happens, because you are exposed to what it is, right? Because up until that point, you have a sense or an idea of what medical training would be, or I guess for anyone, for someone aspiring to be an engineer, you just have a sense of what training to be an engineer would be, but you don't know until you get there. And that's where the shaping of the direction generally happens. And for me, that's how it happened. I guess just like any other cookie cutter medical student who wants to be a surgeon, and I think most people who enter medicine want to become surgeons, because that's, from outside it looks very exciting and dynamic, and that's what everyone wants to be, and that's what I wanted to be. But when you get down to kind of experiencing what it is, when you get down to meeting real patients versus patients in textbooks, and kind of interacting with them and their family members, that's when you kind of get a better sense of what you want to be. And so my interest in psychiatry or mental health was a very organic development from those experiences, a better understanding of my own strengths and limitations, a better understanding of what I thought I would be good at versus what everyone else wanted you to become. And then playing on those strengths kind of brought me to this stage where I thought, okay, this is what I want to do, become a psychiatrist, work in mental health space. That came with a lot of heartburn for a lot of people within the family as well, because mental health patients are stigmatized, but psychiatrists are also stigmatized. So not very happy kind of family about me wanting to become a psychiatrist. But I guess to their credit, I mean, no one tried to stop me or discourage me. Like, it was like, do, if you, that's what you want to do, then go ahead and do it. So that's where the real journey began. I mean, first in India, and then realizing the limitations of some of this education in India, then I went overseas and got kind of.
So I want to pick on this thing that you said, you talked about knowing your strengths, knowing your limitations, which talks about a lot about how self-aware you were. And often while being a teacher in public, often parents and students would come up to me in 9th standard, 10th standard, and just ask me to, do you have a career counseling test for my kid? And then they would go about asking others, what's the best thing in the market, right? And that's the trend, what you just spoke about. And then you are here who's talking about self-awareness and knowing your strengths and limitations, which doesn't really happen at that naive age, at the young age. So what would be your advice to these parents who are right now concerned about their education right at 6th standard and 7th standard?
I think you put a nice word to it, self-awareness. I mean, I guess it's easier to be self-aware in hindsight. When I talk about it now, it does sound as if it is self-aware, but it's not as kind of structured and formal as that. The whole journey, it's a journey of kind of making your mistakes, learning from it. So it's not as smooth. I mean, I don't want to make it sound as if I was very wise for my age many years ago. That's not true. That would be a misrepresentation of things. But I guess to answer your question, I don't think the problem is with young people of today. The problem is the parents, if you ask me. You can become self-aware if and when I say parents, not just parents, I'm talking about society in general, the education system in general in India. One can become self-aware if one is allowed to become self-aware. If everyone around you is making decisions for you and setting kind of boundaries around what you should be doing and not doing, there is no opportunity to become self-aware, even if you want to. And unfortunately, our education system is designed. I had this very interesting thing where our education system is designed like industry, like the car industry, where you have the assembly line. You put students in at one end and you expect them to come out at the other end. Everyone just the same, wanting to do just the same. Everyone wanting to become engineers, everyone wanting to become doctors, lawyers, whatever is the in thing at the moment. Whereas education should be like agriculture or gardening, where, and I think this is appropriate, Seedlings, and I didn't realize it when I thought of that, but where the job of the teacher and the education system is just to plant those ideas and then allow the young person to grow whatever direction they want to grow. You are not deciding that everyone turns out the same way at the end of the education process. And young people are smart these days. I mean, we don't give them credit for it. They're smart. They understand. I mean, I see, look at young people today. They are much smarter than what we were like 10, 15, 20 years ago. So we have to give them credit for it and allow them to, explore their own journeys. And trust me, they're going to make mistakes. That's fine. I mean, everyone makes mistakes. Well, there's no person in this world who doesn't make mistakes. If you make mistakes and you learn, I think the problem is if you don't learn from your mistakes and you allow people to make the mistakes and learn from their own experiences. I mean, just to give you an example, and I quote this quite a lot because to me it's pretty distressing. 4 years or so ago, when COVID happened, someone somewhere came up with this bright idea that all children should learn coding. Probably the stupidest idea that anyone might have put out. Like, why does every child need to learn coding?
Yeah, the white-haired junior phenomenon.
Yeah, everyone went on that coding. Everyone needs to learn. My thinking is there are two reasons why everyone should not learn coding. One is because they might not want to learn coding. Like, simple enough reason for me. If the child does not want to learn coding, then don't teach them coding because that's not what they want to become. That's the first thing. And second thing is, even if we were to think that every child in school wants to learn coding, right? Even let's just assume that everyone wants to learn coding. It's by the time the child finishes their education and goes into the employment market, the coding might become obsolete. Mm-hmm. You might not even need human beings to do coding. Your AI will probably be doing the coding or something else. Who knows? Yeah, or something else. And something else might have happened. Coding might become a completely obsolete skill. So what's the point of teaching kids coding when they are in 5th standard, 6th standard? And the bigger worrying part for me was the fact that parents were demanding for it. Mm-hmm. Parents were demanding for coding to happen. I remember being in a PTA meeting where for my son, and where one of the parents stood up and said, like, why are we not doing more coding? Mm-hmm. And I know where these thoughts are coming from. Some of these thoughts are coming from, and I don't blame parents. Some of these thoughts are coming from our own fears and worries, right? Mm-hmm. I don't say the parents have anything but the best of the parents at heart. But that's not enough. I mean, you need to be also smart and wise about things, right? It's not just about thinking, I want the best for my child. But parents are worried, like, what will happen to my child? Will they be up to the mark in the market?
It's not just parents. There are parents to be. Yeah. Who would, I got a call from one of my friends, and he has, one of them is expecting, and the other is already a father of 1-year-old. And the call was, so Siddharaj, what is the best board school that I should put my child into? And my whole thing was this thing that we're talking about, malleability and allowing for the growth of the brain development and all of those things. And it's a pretty common knowledge today that the child's brain is kind of growing very fast, or it's very malleable at a young age, which is when they would require the most of care, support, and encouragement. And like you said, a lot of parents are already deciding for their kid. And this one guy was, I want him to do mechanical engineering because I'm good at it and I can teach him that. Right? And then there was this other guy who was telling him, are you discounting for a fact? Like, maybe your child doesn't want to do what you want to. So he was exactly talking like how you are speaking. And NEP has kind of also mentioned about these things, right? So when you say that we need to allow ground for the child to develop their own interest, explore more, how would I advise, like that friend of mine who comes to me and says, what should I do with my kid? Right?
I think the first thing to advise your friend is, when he asks what should I do, the first advice should be, don't do anything.
Okay.
I think we mess up things by trying to do too much. When we try to intervene too much as parents, as teachers, we tend to restrict growth. Just let them be. I mean, just be the person who creates an environment for them to flourish. Our job is to create that environment. Mm-hmm. Our job is to give them the resources to try out different things, to learn different things, to experience different things, to make the mistakes and create the safety net to kind of support them when they make the mistakes. Rather than saying you shouldn't be making mistakes, you should listen to me, just create the safety net where they don't fall very hard when they make the mistakes. Mm-hmm. And have conversations about this with the children and not about what they should be doing. I think that's more than enough. That's more than enough.
So when you say safety net, what would that look like in a family?
Well,
at different ages, for example, let's say the child is from infant to a 2-year-old, would look very different from later on. So what does that safety net look like?
So the safety net would differ based on what we are talking about, right? And as you rightly pointed out, the safety net would differ based on what developmental age the child or the young person is. Mm-hmm. When I say safety net, and because I said it will be different for different things, let's say young people doing risky things, right? Like smoking. Let's just take the example of smoking. The important thing to remember is young people are going to take risks. Okay, you can't do anything about it. Our brains are wired to take risks when you are adolescents and young people. That's how our brain is wired. It's evolutionary. I mean, as much as we think we can shift things, we can't. That's going to happen. Either it will happen and you will know about it, or it will happen and you will not know about it. Right, so there is no running away from the fact that young people are wired to take risks because that's the part of how they develop and learn. So there is no point in kind of trying to stop it. But creating a safety net would be, let's just take the example of smoking, right? And a common example or a common way in which you create a safety net is have a conversation with the young person, your child or whatever, your student, is about what are the pros and what are the cons of smoking. Right. And very importantly, kind of having this conversation in an open, non-judgmental manner where you kind of accept that you might go ahead and do this despite me giving the information that it's not great, it's not healthy, but still do it. I would want you to come back and tell me if you did it. And we can have an adult conversation about it. Right. So that's a safety net. It's the child knowing that, and many times when you give them this freedom, they will not do it. That's the best part of it. When you tell people, and again, human beings are wired to do things when they are told not to do something.
Curiosity, it arouses more curiosity about why are these.
Curiosity is going to be there, rebellion, right? Young people are wired to rebel against adults. So you tell them not to do something, and why young people? I mean, even adults do it.
Yeah, that's true.
All of us do it. We like to push against authority. That's it. I mean, a simple example is wearing helmets when you are riding a bike. We know that it's good to wear a helmet, because if you fall and you hit your head,
it could be sometimes.
Yeah, but most of the times our elbow wears the helmet. So we possibly kind of value our elbows more than our brain, but that aside, that's an example of why people not doing things that they should be doing. So it's ingrained in us. So I wouldn't kind of blame the young person for pushing boundaries. That's what they are going to do. There's no running away from it. I think it's for us to kind of create an environment where they, if they want to do it, they feel safe about doing it, and you know about it, so that you can help if things go pear-shaped. I think to me that's creating a safety net.
But there is this is one side of addiction, when you actually go and explore that thing which is bad, right? But there is what causes addiction? Like, why in the first place would a child go and explore these things? Is it just the curiosity, or is it is there something more to it?
Well, there are lots of things. I mean, like curiosity is just one part of it. It's you, and I'm not even speaking about addiction here. Okay, addiction is like the more extreme end when you kind of, there are various different things that happen. But then before addiction happens, there is like most young people in India would be trying out something that they shouldn't be trying. It's various reasons
cultural.
for that. It's no. I mean, there's social reasons for it. I mean, young people are being targeted systematically by industry, whether it's alcohol, whether it's tobacco. Your so-called youth icons are kind of freely talking about whatever they might call it on television. But everyone, Shah Rukh Khan, Amitabh Bachchan, everyone is selling tobacco in without calling it tobacco. But that's there. But the point is not that. The point is what are the things that happen. So curiosity is just one of it. Like, so other thing is peer pressure. Very common for that. Peer pressure is inevitable. It's not going to go away. That is again how young people develop. So peer pressure to try out new things, different things, risky things is going to happen. Pressure of academics is a huge problem in India at the moment. That's going to, if people are looking for a way out of that pressure or stress, substances are the way that young people are looking at it, like, or not even kind of mental health problems like depression, anxiety, which does lead to people to smoke and then use alcohol, but just the stress of, like, the daily stressors of life are something that push people towards using substances. The availability, the easy availability of substances is a big indicator of, if you can get it easily, you're going to use it. I mean, there's if the companies are going to target you, people are going to use it. So there are a lot of things why this is going to happen. So as I said, there's no running away from it. Now the thing is, how can you help keep it safe, and how can you kind of give better information so that either it does not happen or it's delayed, because the earlier it happens, the greater the chances of developing problems. The later it happens, the lesser the chances. So some of these things are unavoidable. It's how we deal with them that becomes more important.
No, while you were speaking, there was this one thing that was like just coming at me when you talked about academic pressure, right? Today, I also take a after school class, right? My business is that. But at the same time, what I see, the change that has happened is there is a demand for keeping the child busy throughout the day. It's not just the school. They would go for 5 hours to the school, then they would go for a class for 2 hours, some class that is exactly similar to the school, right? And then they would go for some other class like singing, dancing, and then some would pick up sport, and the child is completely exhausted at the end of the day. And when you mentioned stress, it's not just academic stress, it is stress to perform those 7 subjects apart, but in other things as well. So do you think the parent should relax a bit now that...
Absolutely. I mean, there are no two ways about it. I mean, parents should definitely relax. And there are various reasons. I can also understand. As I said before, no parent has any bad intentions when it comes to a child. It's all done with good intentions. But good intentions by themselves do not mean that the outcome of those good intentions will be good, right? So this is not uncommon, what you described, like keeping, and there are various reasons for it. I mean, sometimes it is just because the parents are working and you don't want a child sitting at home not doing anything. So
I think most schools and classes run because parent doesn't want the child.
Exactly. And then there is the worry and the fear, right? I mean, I want my child to become good at everything. Which is unrealistic. I mean, no one is going to be good at everything. But more importantly, and beyond the stress on the child and the exhaustion, the physical exhaustion and the mental exhaustion of kind of doing all of these different things, I think the other thing is also not understanding the importance of not doing anything.
The boredom. Just be...
not doing anything is also very important. Because when you're not doing anything, you are thinking. Right. So allowing the child the space of not doing anything also is very important. My son is sitting in the audience. My son sometimes just sits and looks into infinity. I don't know what he's doing. But I know that one can't have a blank mind. It's just not possible. Physiologically, it's not possible. So when he's sitting there and looking into infinity, I know that he's thinking something.
Mm-hmm.
And creativity comes from thinking. New ideas come from thinking. We don't allow our children the space to not do anything and get bored. And I learned this from a developmental pediatrician, okay? And this is not something that had struck me. I was speaking to a developmental pediatrician, and she said to me, today we don't allow our children to get bored.
Mm-hmm.
We want to keep them engaged all the time. Whether it's giving them a tablet or a digital device or whatever, we just don't allow them to be bored. Getting bored is very important. Because if the child is getting bored, they are forced to find ways to keep themselves entertained and engaged.
Mm-hmm.
We don't allow them that space. I remember when I was a child, we would play imaginary games.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, you sit with a friend, like when we were in primary school, and imagine that this is a car, and we would drive, and we would like be imagining we have reached here, we have reached there. Or the very commonest game that young people in India play, Chor Police.
Mm-hmm.
That's fully based on imagination, right? You pick up a piece of stick that becomes your gun.
Mm-hmm.
Keeping the violent aspects of it aside, but that's imagination. If we allow our children to become bored, it forces them to think and become creative. It forces them to entertain themselves.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't do it, we are not allowing them that luxury.
This is really scary because
what I said is scary, and
what is happening is scary, because now that you say this, that it is an impediment to our creativity. We have a whole new generation that is growing up right now, who has grown up with the smartphone, and COVID has made sure that every child has their own smartphone now, which means this black screen is a black hole into which the child would they have their own world inside that. And you would see a lot of kids using multiple devices today to keep them stimulated, which has multiple different things that come to my mind. One is, okay, let's take the most simple one that you would see in any restaurant. You walk into any restaurant tomorrow and you sit, apart from the adults being on their own phones, even my parents do that, but there are these young kids who are made to sit with a phone kept here like this, and there is Coco Melon playing, and without Coco Melon the child doesn't take even a... I have some parents who are very cautious about this, but I know some parents who are very cautious about not allowing screen time, but during the food time they have to. So what the screen has replaced is a Kako, I know. That has been replaced by Coco Melon. So now how do you...
Yeah, I don't know about Coco Melon. I have seen Peppa Pig.
Yes, Peppa Pig.
But...
same genre.
Yeah, same genre. Okay, great. I mean, a disclaimer I'm just start off with again. Okay, as I said, no parents had bad intentions. And again, I know where this whole giving the device to feed comes from. I mean, parents are busy today. They have to feed the child. Children are usually fussy when they're very small when it comes to eating. They have to get the child to have their food and then go to work. Completely understand the context and where it is coming from. But it doesn't help. Mm-hmm. As I said, I mean, just because something is there's a rationale or reason behind it doesn't necessarily mean that it's helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So you described feeding, you described restaurants. Other thing that distresses me quite a lot is, again, I see this a lot on the airports. Usually the airport, you're waiting for a flight, the child is sitting with a tablet in hand and doing whatever they are doing, and the parents are on their own devices. While there is a reason for why parents do this, I think we should not be doing it for various reasons. And not doing it is going to make it hard and difficult for parents. I understand that. It's going to make your lives difficult. If you're young parents and you've got small kids, it's going to make your life difficult. But no one ever said that parenting was easy. You know, it's always been difficult. And in our attempt to make it easy, we probably are kind of looking at problems down the road. We are kind of avoiding problems now. Because a lot of times I see the little clinical work that I do here nowadays is that parents coming to you saying that my child can't get off a device, but they come to you when it is of importance to them. And when is it of importance to them is when the child is going to answer their boards. That's when parents realize that this is a problem. Right? So if the changes have to be made, they have to be made at an early stage. I'm not saying making the changes is easy. It's difficult. It's difficult because devices are becoming an ubiquitous part of our life. They are there everywhere. They are tempting. They have content in them which is very engaging. They have content in them which is designed to kind of engage you and keep you kind of connected. So it's a tough fight for parents.
And also teachers.
And teachers. For teachers, it's relatively easier because you can say ban the device in the school. It's relatively easier.
You can ban the device in school, but you can't ban it completely in terms of what information they bring in from there.
I say relatively easier.
Because just yesterday, I was in a school in Panjim. I was taking a class. And I did something. I was doing an exercise with them, and then from the back of the class, something that is going on the reel right now, right? Somebody said that, and I was like, "This is." And some days back, it was something else. I forgot what it was even. Right? There was this moe thing that was happening back in the day. I'm teaching, and the moe starts somewhere in the classroom. So what you know is that these kids are engaged with that content a lot, right? Inadvertently they are coming in. And what, as teachers you go to any school and ask a teacher who has you don't even ask, you just go and talk to them, and then they'll tell you that the children have changed in the last 10 years, the rate at which things have changed. So it's also a big fight for the teacher to develop ways of keeping them engaged, because they are so very well stimulated with all those colors and light, and which we can't really do, right, inside the classroom. And it is going to be a big fight. And I think if NEP is implemented in the right manner, maybe some things would be taken care of. But
I think the key word in what you said is implemented in the right manner. I think those are the key words. I mean, the thing is, most of our policies are really good. It's where we fail is in the implementation. And if we don't implement these policies well, they fail, or the purpose is kind of destroyed. Lest anyone thinks that I'm kind of anti-technology and anti-devices and anti-modernity. I mean, just want to make it clear that just like everything else, there are strengths and weaknesses of technology. You know, we can't be thinking that this is the only way we can do things, which is technology and everything, and we can't be thinking that technology is so bad that we should ban it, you know, for young people. And it's happened. Like, recently there was this news, I don't know which country, Albania or some they are thinking of banning social media for children. I don't know how they will do it, but in any case, so the thing is, just as with everything else in life, there are good sides and bad sides to technology. Now, if we have to leverage the good sides, we have to be strategic about it as parents, as teachers, etc. Right? because the good side is, I mean, we all know what the good side is. It exposes to you to so many different things that you wouldn't have been exposed to if there was no technology. So I think that's a good side of it. But the flip side of that, of spending too much time engaged with your device and what's happening in your device, is atrophy. So just to give you a physical example, if I were to kind of tie up my hand like this for the next 2 months and not use it at all, my muscles will start getting smaller and smaller. They will atrophy. What happens with digital devices and spending too much time on digital devices for children is there is social atrophy. People or young people then do not have the skills to interact and work with people in the real world.
We are already seeing this.
Exactly. So that social atrophy is going to be a big problem, because if you, at the end of the day, we are social animals. We live in society. We have to work with people. So having those social skills is extremely important. That can't be replaced by technology. And so the social atrophy, because people are spending too much time in devices, is going to be a real big problem. And that's one of the reasons. And that's why I keep saying, I mean, again, this is an exam, something that I came across just after COVID was kind of dying off. It's not completely gone, but like a dying off. And schools were about to start. I was at a meeting at the school. And one of the parents said this, and I was horrified when I heard this. One of the parents said, for almost 2 years, our kids have been at home and you have been teaching them virtually, digitally, and they have been able to, cover all of the curriculum sitting at home on the device. Why do they need to come to school?
That was asked to me by one of the members in the audience right now.
I was gobsmacked.
A couple of weeks back.
Yeah, I was gobsmacked.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, if you ask me, kids do not go to school to learn the curriculum. Kids go to school for their social development. I don't mind if teachers don't teach anything in the schools. No problem. Some of the teachers and parents sitting here might be horrified. Because some of those things can be taught at home, or they could learn them from devices, books, etc. But what is the most important part of going to school these days is the socialization. Being with your friends, learning to interact with your friends, how to talk with friends, how to behave with other people. Those are the most important things to learn in school. Curriculum can be done anyway. That's what happens in any case, right? I mean, like, when your exams
make sure that you
the
learn.
Curriculum gets covered. That's not the most important bit. So, to me, I think that's very important for parents and teachers to learn. The why are kids coming to school and what we should be doing at school is this bit, according to me.
So, although these YouTube channels, you might find very good teachers out there, right? Or you might be learning wherever, right? Make sure that you don't drop out of school because of that, right? And this is a very big misconception. Even if I ask a room full of kids, why do you come to school? The first answer that they give is, I come to learn, which is a outright, what do you call it? It's a lie. Everybody goes to school to meet with people, right? Yeah, meet friends. If you don't have friends coming, or tomorrow my friend is not coming, I don't want to go to school, right? So,
but may I just add a rider to that? In that, again, I don't want to be misunderstood. Okay, I think it's important to also ensure that, let's say, for example, if we were to kind of think of the worst case scenario of what I said, that no one teaches anything at school and kids just go there to have fun and socialize, which is perfectly fine. But then it's important for parents in that scenario, worst case scenario, important for the parents to create an environment at home where the kids can learn at home. And when I say create an environment, it's not, I don't want parents to sit and teach the kids. Just create an environment of learning where there is an environment of curiosity, where you're allowing them to have the tools that they require. Like, what could the tools be? Books, ironically devices.
Yeah.
So some of these things, creating that environment which helps the child to learn is very important.
So what would that look like? Like, let's say.
So I think before we kind of think about what would that look like, I think the bigger problem is today parents see or want to completely delegate the responsibility of the education / learning or / knowledge acquisition of the child to schools. Like, I send my child, is how parents say, I send my child, it's now the teacher's responsibility or the school's responsibility to do the education bit of it. You know, and the bigger the school, the more expensive the school, the bigger the delegation of responsibility, because you are thinking, there's cognitive consonance, right? You are thinking, I have given that huge amount of money, so you know, my child should come out perfect from that school and the school should be doing all of this. And you're kind of absolving yourself of the responsibility for the learning, education, knowledge acquisition of the child. I think it's very important to remember that education of the child does not happen in the school. It needs to continue at home as well. So we can't be thinking that now I have kind of handed over responsibility, I want to get a finished product at the end of it. I think it's very important for parents to learn.
You mentioned the availability of time, right?
Yeah.
And often I also encounter this now less than before, because a lot of my kids also choose to come online than come in person. But when they are in person, they would give you these small windows of opportunity to engage in a conversation when they are really interested. And sometimes those are the moments that we let go of because we are busy doing something else, right? A child would ask a very good question which could, drive a conversation. But often we find that we are doing something else and that kind of gets pushed behind. So I think there is another thing that these kids give you those opportunities of engaging in a conversation and develop. Another interesting thing I came across very recently, I'm attending a course on how different schools are doing different things across the world, and I came across this nice term called social emotional learning, something that I think we were not very much exposed to 10 years back. Nobody used to talk about this, and this has been a subject that has been introduced inside these top schools, right, where you have to actually lay emphasis on social learning. Now, how does that really happen at home or outside? How do you see that happening?
So, I guess that's
or is it that it just happens, or do you create it? Do you create an environment for it?
So I think firstly, with a lot of these things that we hear about, right, social emotional learning and of the jargon that we hear, it's we tend to make these things complicated, right? I mean, like, the moment you use a term like that, everyone feels, oh my god, this is something probably very important, and this person really knows what he's talking about. But a lot of these things are very simple, basic things that we need to do. And what are the things that we need to do? And as I've said before as well, and I keep saying, creating the opportunities for the child to learn in various different contexts outside of the textbooks is very important. And this is the social bits of it, this is the emotional bits of it, right? Like why a child feels the way they do, and what do they do when they feel that way, or how do they respond when they feel a certain way. These are things around which you need to have conversations with the child, and that's where time comes in. I mean, you mentioned this thing about time. Having the time to spend with your child is become a very, very expensive commodity today. And again, I'm not blaming parents for this, right? I mean, that's the reality of the world. People are doing too many things and people don't have time. And we're never going to have time. We have to create the time. When things are important, we have to create the time. It's not going to come out of anywhere. You've got 24 hours in a day. We have other things to do. We have to create time for important things which are a priority for us. And our children, I'm sure, are a priority for all of us. I can also understand that sometimes we might, what you kind of said, this they come up with something, they ask you something. These are sometimes teachable moments, right? I mean, young people or everyone remembers things when they happen at teachable moments. Something happens and you kind of use that as an opportunity to teach them something rather than kind of teaching all the time. So those teachable moments might not come at an opportune moment for you because you might be busy doing something. You might be attending your own meeting, you might be doing your, whatever work it is that you do, and that teachable moment is not right for you. But that's fine. Or if the child comes to you with a question and you're doing something at the moment very important, you don't have time, that's fine. It's okay to not respond to it at that moment. But it's also very important to communicate to the child why you are not doing it at the moment. You say like, this is a very interesting question that you have come to me with. I really want to engage with you on this, but as you can see, I'm in a meeting. Give me an hour. Once I finish the meeting, I'll come back to you and we can talk about this. And it's very important to then come back to it and have that discussion. Right?
No, so what happens instead in these teachable moments when you are busy, like you said, often the adult might respond in a way, hey, itle anare tuka, or simple, no, or something like, culturally we are very okay with calling someone a piece of, or dog. These were very acceptable terms in our culture over the years. Only when RTE came in 2010, when the corporal punishment was banned in schools, did the parents also take a notice of this and kind of curtailed back on calling these things. But even today, I have students who tell me that I'm being called a gado at home. These are also labelings that are happening even today. So what you are speaking and what the, what do you call it, the vastav or the...
Yeah, there's a huge, absolutely. I'm not
There's a stark difference between the two. So.
Yeah, but we don't want to paint everyone in the same brush. I'm sure everyone doesn't do it.
No, I'm not saying so, but there are...
Yeah, but there is, the reality is different. And as I said, while I'm talking about more or less an ideal kind of situation, I know that some of these things won't be possible for everyone, right? Kind of creating the time, because we are talking about a certain socioeconomic strata which will have probably that luxury to do some of these things. Everyone does not have the luxury of the time or the space or the economic resources to make some of these things happen. So I'm completely cognizant of that. I'm just talking about a kind of more or less ideal situation which people should aspire towards. Might not be possible for everyone. But in any circumstance, some of these things that you describe are not acceptable, like calling someone names. And it's not just the parents. I know that it happens in schools as well. So I think calling someone names is not very helpful because people don't change because you call them names. So it's not useful in any way, in any case. Just because you kind of, the thinking behind that is, again, an issue with the Indian education system throughout. Not just at the primary and secondary level. Even up to like higher education and MBBS or whatever. The problem is, teachers, and again, I don't want to paint everyone in the same brush. I know that all teachers are not the same. I can see one of my secondary school teachers sitting at the back there. All teachers are not the same. But what I'm trying to say is this general thinking also among parents that you can shame people into learning. You can't shame people into learning. If someone is not able to understand something or learn something, it's because they can't. There is some problem. We have to resolve that problem. You can't shame that person into understanding that. And this is with adults as well, right? We try to shame people into doing things. We try to scare people into changing or learning. You can't shame and scare people into doing these things. There are much more better, nicer ways of helping young people than shaming them. I think
it's not just young
anyone, not just young people, anyone. Just shaming people is just not acceptable.
So I was having a conversation the other day with kids around, and I was just talking to them about everything. And I also like to sing, so I was singing some songs, and they were also singing. I was encouraging them to sing. And then one girl just says to me, "Sir, I love music," right? I think I asked them a question: what would you like to do in school that you don't do, like you do at home but you can't do it here? She's like, "I'm always on my headphones listening to music." And then what she said me really surprised me, it just took me aback. Like, what do you do to escape life? And in lieu of this escaping that the students do, they kind of try all these things that you mentioned about earlier. Right? Sometimes it's music, sometimes it's something else. So every person has their own way of escaping life. And I just wanted to mention that, that this is happening in early teenage. If you just sit with them for half an hour, every person will tell you their own story about.
Yeah, but it's also not unusual for adolescents to have these kind of, because again, adolescents are finding their place in the world, and it's not unusual to have questions about why am I here, what am I doing, what's my purpose in life. These are the kind of questions that teenagers and adolescents have. It's not nothing unusual about it. I think it's just that some people find a way of voicing it, and many young people will not voice it because they're worried about the reactions that they may get from people around them.
So do you think that the consequences that adults have to the conversations that the child might want to have is the very thing that is stopping the child from?
Yeah, I mean that's with everyone, right? Again, we are kind of using the framework of a young person to kind of have these conversations, but some of these things apply for everyone. I mean, even as an adult, like let's say in your workplace, and you have to kind of talk to your boss, and you're worried about the consequences of what you might say, right? You may say, if I say this, am I going to get someone who is empathetic towards my issues, or someone who is going to fire me? Your responses or what you say or not say depends on what responses you expect. And similarly with young people, I mean, what they say, what they don't say, how they say it, when they say it, where they say it, is all dependent on the responses that they expect from the adults in their lives, be it their parents or the teachers. So again, something for us to be very mindful of.
Yeah, and often like the other thing that they ask that question, and I think I have asked that, I even asked it today. What is life? And they're trying to make sense of everything that they are feeling. And adolescence is a time when you have multiple emotions, and there are some new emotions that have just sprung about. You're trying to understand your own self, and many people are not really able to regulate those emotions. So how can we as teachers, like if I'm dealing with a teenager, what can we do to help them express or regulate their emotions in certain way? Sometimes we see it in terms of violence, sometimes we see it in terms of aloofness, that a child would just keep quiet, and then some people might say, till 8th standard he was a very nice kid, bubbly and all of that. Well, I don't know what happened to him this year. He just sits in one corner, doesn't talk to anyone. So you have both these sort of expressions to these emotional regulation. So how does one as an adult engage in such sort of conversations? Because I don't think, even though if we say it is required that we talk to them, we don't really know how to approach it, because we have not experienced it ourselves. Like for example, the terms that I was using, like labeling, calling someone a piece or whatever, I don't think people are doing it intentionally. They are doing it because their parents did it to them, and then it just kind of passes on. So how do you intervene and change that? Or
I think the most important thing for all of this is communication, right? I mean, it's we don't either have the time to communicate with young people at their level, or we are too scared of what we might find, then hence we don't have that conversations with young people. I think it's important to have conversations with young people. It's important to have these conversations in a non-judgmental manner. I think that's very important, which is where this whole labeling thing comes in. It's very important to have these conversations in an empathetic manner, which is kind of trying to understand things from a young person's perspective and not my perspective as an adult. And it's important to not rush to problem solving. Right, because our instinct as human beings is to immediately try to problem solve. We immediately say, why don't you do this and you'll feel better? Or I did this and I felt better immediately, why don't you try it out? Right? Or why like, let's say you don't get good marks in the exams, you're like, I think you should be reading more and you'll be fine and you'll get good marks. That's problem solving, right? Without trying to understand why the child did not get good marks.
Or rushing to a solution.
Exactly. That's
You don't really solve the problem eventually.
Yeah, in a sense, giving solutions very rapidly without kind of emphasizing. And I think just having open conversations and trying to understand people. And this is, again, I'm putting this in the framework of young people because we're talking about young people, but this is everyday life with anyone, even if it is adults. Our instinct to give solutions, we should curb. We should spend more time listening to people than talking at people. I think, and so sometimes these things that you see as issues with young people will resolve if you just give them a patient listening ear. That's all they want. They don't want you to solve problems. I mean, if you can just listen to them, not be judgmental, not to jump to kind of putting together solutions for them because they can find their own solutions. I think that's more than enough. That's what they want. I mean, I think that's what needs to change. And as I said, this is not just about young people. You should try this with anyone, even adults. Trust me, you'll find it very helpful. Just listening to people.
So what you're saying is, instead of us solving the problem for them, they need to be able to come up with their own solutions, which means they need to be able to do problem solving.
Yeah. Right. One of my biggest pet projects, which has not started yet, is my thinking that, which comes from the thinking that all students in schools should be taught structured problem solving skills. Most important. I think that is an important life skill that people lack. And when I say structured problems, when I'm talking about structured problems, it's not about solving problems, but it's about the mechanisms of solving a problem so that it doesn't overwhelm you. Because when we look at problems in their entirety, it overwhelms us, and that's where all the kind of issues start. But if we are able to have a structured way of doing it, and there is a structured way of doing it, then that would be very useful.
So the design thinking.
Yeah, exactly.
Principle.
So like breaking it down, what's the problem? Breaking it down, what are the potential solutions? What are the pros and cons to each one of these solutions? Which is the best one? Let me try this out. Try it out. If it works, great. If it doesn't, go to the next solution. All of these things, I think, are very, very important. So life skills are not something that we teach in schools. Right, life skills such as problem solving, how to handle peer pressure, how to kind of work on your own self-esteem. I mean, those are the kind of things that young people should be taught in schools. Those are going to be very important in their lives. Coding is not. Trust me. Trust me, coding is not. Because by the time they go into the real world, coding, as I said, might be obsolete. But how to manage your own self-esteem? Always going to need it. How to solve problems? Always going to need it, whatever profession you go into. How to communicate with other people? Always going to need it, whatever profession you are into. How to collaborate and work with other people? Always going to need it. How to be creative? Always going to need it. And how to think critically? Always going to need it. More so in today's world when there is a flood of information that young people, and I'm sorry to say their parents as well, are getting and have no ability or limited ability to critically evaluate what you are seeing, whether it's on social media, on your WhatsApp or whatever. just taking everything at face value. I think the ability to critically evaluate what you're seeing, what you're hearing, what people are telling you, what you're reading, and making your own judgment on what is correct, what is not, what is trustworthy, what is not. That is an absolute important skill which you require whatever age, whatever profession you go into.
Yeah.
Everything else you will learn. And the thing is, because things are moving so fast in today's world, right? And this is again a prediction that has been made, I don't know, that some of the skills that we will learn, I mean, like, we have been pretty lucky. I mean, our generation has been pretty lucky. Our generations before us has been pretty lucky, because if you learn one skill and do it really well, you can make a profession out of it for the rest of your life until you retire. It's not the case anymore. Things are changing so fast. Science is changing so fast. Technology is changing so fast that something that you learn today might not be useful to you 5 years down the line. So you might have to change professions. You might have to change the skills that you need. You might have to change the competencies that you need. But if your foundation is strong on some of these skills, like problem solving and critical thinking, creativity, etc., you can learn all of these other things. Or you can get someone else to do it for you. You know, either it's a human being or AI, whatever.
Yeah.
But these foundational, fundamental skills, you require them in whatever profession you go to and whatever age you are talking about.
Well, while you were speaking all of these things, one of the things that was coming to my mind again and again, next week is when we are starting a pet project that I have with Bhatikar Model High School, where we're trying to form a student-driven club around STEM, because that's where my expertise comes from, where the students will decide what they want to do in the school, right? And when you mentioned like about these problem solving and collaboration, all of these things are kind of exactly against how our education system is today. Our education system values individuality because it makes you compete and come first. That's the first thing. Secondly, that is the reason you would not collaborate. I have had experiences as a kid where a person has refused to share his book with me because I would have that. Today it's not the case, but these are the kind of cultural constructs that kind of people are being put into while they are growing up. And on the other hand, you say these are exactly the opposite of that are the skills that are really required. And now that I'm doing that project with them, so what should I be doing? Like just some tips, you know, to start the groundwork.
Yeah, I think, but what you described, the contrast between how we are brought up, both schools, homes, society, how we are conditioned, and how the real world operates. The disconnect between those two things in India is the primary reason, in my opinion, why young people who are graduating are not industry ready at all. Like, we might have the most fantastic degrees when we come out of university in India, but you go into the marketplace, which is eventually the thing that's going to decide whether you are good at something or not. Whatever profession you choose, if you're not industry ready, if you don't know what to do there, it's all of this is useless. And we are not industry ready because we are not taught the real skills that are required in industry, which is creativity, collaboration, communication, in whatever profession you go in. So I think what you're setting out to do is great.
Yeah, but
you have a big challenge in front of you.
It's a huge challenge, but
because it requires,
that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, and I don't know whether I have the answer, because this is an attitudinal shift. Right? This is not going to happen overnight. This is an attitudinal shift within an ecosystem which is completely in contrast to that. You are introducing and wanting to introduce an attitudinal shift in the rest of the education system is still kind of doing what it is been doing for centuries.
The middle ground, sort of.
No, this whole individual competition, who comes first, and all of that.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a major challenge. I don't really think I have an answer to it beyond what I've said.
But I think we will continue the conversation.
Yeah, no, I have ideas in terms of concepts and principles which I have spoken about, but how to deploy them and implement them in a context which is not ready for it, I must confess, I have no clue. I mean,
But I think if you have the same thoughts, I have the same thoughts. I know there are certain people in the audience who have the same thoughts. I would like to invite everyone to, maybe someday we all meet up, share these ideas, try out a few things in our own small, ecosystems that we go back to. And maybe come up with something that is implementable in our context, in whatever context that we are interacting with this world. I actually wanted to end the interview on this note, but I don't know if I should, but today is the Suicide Prevention Week. It's ending today, right? And the other day, one of my uncles sent me a WhatsApp, and it said the suicide rate in India is increasing by 2%. Student suicide rate is increasing by 4%. And there was a tag at there's a tagline at the end of it. How is our Indian youth experiencing mental health challenges? And are these suicides related to mental health directly, or are there other reasons for these sort of?
Sure. So, I think we should be having these conversations. Firstly, we should be having these conversations more often, like not the larger conversation we had, but about suicide. And the reason I say this is because we have these conversations only when the Suicide Prevention Week happens, and then everyone is then talking about it and sending WhatsApp forwards. You will see pieces on television, and then everyone forgets about it until the next year. I think this is a constant conversation that needs to happen, and very importantly, it's a constant conversation that needs to happen because we are losing a large chunk of our young people in India to suicides.
Yeah. 70% is between the age of 18 to 45. 70% of suicides are happening between the age of 18 to 45. That's the data.
And the thing is, because and I'm speaking this not as a mental health professional anymore, and the reason for that is, in contrast to the West, where suicide or people dying by suicide is driven largely by mental health problems. In India, that's not true. In India, the large proportion of people, both young and otherwise, who are dying of suicide are dying because of social reasons. The end link in the chain for some might be mental health, but the events and the situation and the context leading up to people dying by suicide is not mental health but social. And because we are talking about
by social, what do you mean?
Yeah, so because we are talking about young people today, I'll just talk about only one of the things that comes up. And this is data from India. This is not very reliable because suicide recording of suicide data is done by the National Criminal Record Bureau and NCRB, and it's not very reliable. There's a lot of underreporting. But the reasons that they record, amongst that, one of the big reasons that is seen in India is academic pressures.
Mm-hmm.
Then there are others, family relationship problems and relationship issues, but academic pressures is one of the biggies in India, and that has nothing to do with mental health, right? In one sense, as in it's obviously pressure is mental health related, but I'm talking about mental disorders. We like to think about mental disorders like depression, and someone died by suicide because they had depression, they had a mental health problem. They stress. In that sense, there is a mental health stress or an issue, but what is the driver for it is academic pressure. And that's something for us to kind of think about, because we are losing we keep talking about India's demographic dividend and a lot of young people, and this is we think in economic terms, like this is going to pay off at some stage, but it's not going to pay off if we are losing that demographic dividend to suicide, and something that is completely avoidable. That's the biggest thing about it. It's completely avoidable. But we're going to make that change only if we continue having these conversations and kind of try shifting the needle on this, especially with young people when it comes to these social issues and what's driving this death by suicide amongst young people in India.
Yeah. So with that, we'll just quickly summarize what you have just said on top of my mind. The need to move from rote-based learning to teaching the kids critical thinking, to give time to our kids so that in those small moments that they come up to us, those teachable moments as you call them, we be available for them. The need to move away from competition to collaboration. The need to reduce the academic pressure on students. Students need to be allowed to be bored and be told that it is okay to be bored and not be always stimulated by devices. Anything else that you said?
No, I think that about summarizes everything I said. I think then the bottom line for all of this is that parents just need to relax and take a little bit of a backseat.
Take a chill pill.
I think that's probably old-fashioned now. I don't know what Gen Alpha will probably say something about it. We will probably not understand at all what it means, but they understand. So yeah.
Yeah. So I think we come to an end of this. Thank you very much.